good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Arno Reuser. Forget about my family name. Not many people know how to pronounce that. Just call me Arno. I'm from the Netherlands. I do apologize for my English. My English is a mixture of Dutch, English and American. Hopefully you can make something out of it. My background is Dutch Defense Intelligence and Security Service. They asked me in the early 90s, when I was a literature searcher, I published an abstract journal on ordnance technologies, and they asked me, the intelligence service asked me to come over to establish their open source intelligence shop in the early 90s, because I could do such interesting things with the internet, which back then in the Netherlands, and you have to realize the Netherlands is about 25 years behind anything that's happening in the United States. We didn't have internet. I was probably one of the very few who had access to the internet, and there was no Windows. There was no World Wide Web. I had to use Archie, Waze, Veronica, etc. to get access to all that information, which I combined with information I could find in libraries, which I could find combined with information I could find in all these commercial information providers I had online. LexisNexis, Dialog, ProQuest, Factiva, you name it, I had it. And they loved this concept of actually providing answers to questions instead of piles of information like librarians. Do we have librarians in here? Good? All right, many librarians do, except you. All right, but giving piles of documents instead of answers. And what I always was trained to do is help people solving an information problem. And that was what I was trained to do, and that's what I've always done all my life. So I established an open source shop, which didn't exist, and nobody knew exactly what it was. And what I found when I looked at all these analysts actually doing open source, that they achieved this particular lovely effect. Does this sound familiar to you? You have an information problem, you go to Google. I have no idea why. Many people go to Google for every information problem with two assumptions. One, that the answer to the problem is to be found somewhere in digital form. And two, that Google has it. And both are wrong. Because there's much, much more out there than you think. And I would like to share just a few examples there with you. This is a presentation on the practitioner side, as you have found out by now, because I'm not an academic. I love academic discussions, but we want to know where's the enemy. We want to know where's the crook, where's the criminal. So I'm much more on the practitioner side. So I'll show you some examples there, okay? First, I needed some definitions on what exactly is open source intel, what is intelligence, and what is information, what's the difference between intelligence and information. And nobody had the answer. Nobody could explain to me what exactly intelligence analysis is, like you know. So what I did was, I simply said, okay, I'm not going to give you a definition on intelligence, I'm going to give you that intelligence is about something, and information is about something, and this way I try to make a distinction. Does this make sense to you? Intelligence being something like explaining, interpreting, predicting, comparing, etc. And information is retrieving, indexing, making accessible, because nobody does that, indexing, putting metadata on top of it, etc., etc. The one thing that I really dislike is all these sources out there that claim that they actually acquire intelligence, which is utter crap. I'm from Amsterdam, I say the things like I think they are. Intelligence is never acquired or collected. It is being produced thanks to some production process called analysis. Anyway, all right. So in this logical chain that you see on top, this lovely picture there, data is the core bits which you can change by some process into information, which is reliable, validated, deduplicated, etc., etc. And then we have a process called intelligence, a process called analysis, or whatever you call that, to produce intelligence, which should lead to some influence at least in a decision, which should lead to some change at the customer side. Get the idea? Get the idea?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Well, have you fallen asleep? No, oh, thank God for that. That would be a pity, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, anyway. So this is what I try to work with, and it works pretty well in the 25 years that I had the pleasure of doing this work. I also needed a definition for what open source intelligence actually is, and this is what I came with. Open source intelligence as a collaborative production process. A production process where a certain information need is met by a process of synthesis, collecting, validated, blah, 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 blah. All right. Open source, I sometimes read in the press or in the literature, is sometimes defined as simply unclassified information. Full stop, that's it. I have no idea who makes that up. Well, I do. But I can't do anything with it. It's pointless. And I needed these definitions to limit myself in the work I do. Otherwise I've got way too much work. I was not looking for an academic definition, but simply to know what am I going to do in this new function and how am I going to develop this, for which I needed the definition so I could limit myself. And open source information, the critical words in there in what open source information is ethical. Because with all the search techniques I know, with all the strategies I know, and all the strategies that the librarian knows there in the middle, I can find things that I'm not supposed to find. I promise you that, okay? And I also know the techniques that I've learned myself to find how to get access to information that I'm not supposed to have access to. And maybe that is all legal, but it's not ethical to get all that information. Does that make sense? It's another discussion that I'm happy to have with you under the pleasure of a Texan beer. I can discuss frighteningly good when I get a Texan beer. It's unbelievable. Anyway, so how much information is there out there? These are two of my favorite phrases. Al-Qaeda, who once said in their encyclopedia on page 76, 80% of the information is to be found in public sources. 80% of the information, you know this, don't you? And Tony Zinni, 80% easy, 60%, 16% extra if he knew what to look for, and at best only 4% was classified information. That's it, that's all. Alright? There is a lot out there, and that is also the disadvantage of open source Intel. On OSINT characteristics, I'm going quickly through this because I want to go to the sources, which is much more fun. You know all this, cheap, fast, quick, easy to get, easy to disseminate, because it is open. What I would like to show you is the only big disadvantage that I've seen all these 20 years of OSINT, and that is, it is not secret. And therefore not sexy. And therefore not serious. And there's many analysts out there, especially, I can say it because I am the older generation analysts, who simply say that is open and therefore unreliable. Even if I have the evidence that it happened. And I've had many clashes there. I didn't make many friends, I can promise you that. Okay, so many people think that Google is a fantastic source. Come to my training and I will prove to you how unreliable Google is. Okay, by simply using a couple of lovely queries where Google will go flat on its back. Suppose that this entire yellow square is the entire world of information, everything. Then I would argue that the inner circle, the print world, what I call the print world, is part of all the information out there. All right? I would then say that the internet is a very small part of that print world, believe it or not. But there is so much information out there that the internet only covers a small part, believe me. Then I would argue that the World Wide Web is only a very small part of the internet, because the internet is much more than just World Wide Web. Ask your students what else is there on the internet except World Wide Web, they have no clue. Many people don't even think about email, which is not World Wide Web. Then I would say the World Wide Web, only a very small part of the World Wide Web is covered by search engines. How much in percentage of the World Wide Web is actually indexed by a search engine? 2% at max, and mostly only 1%. The deep web is at least 50 times larger than the surface web. Some sources say 500 times larger, and one source that I read actually said 1500 times larger, but he didn't have any evidence there. Which means that a search engine is not your first search machine. And of these search engines, Google is just one of them. Now you see how insignificant Google is. It is not your first means of doing your research on the web. Here's two examples why I really object to just everybody using the search engines. Example one is some more complex query in Google, yet many people have no idea what it means. Example two is a blunder in a query, which means that you miss 90% of all the results. But not many people see that. If you don't see this, you have no business on the internet. Not at all. So I come to my own interpretation of the intelligence cycle. And with all respect, I've never seen so much crap in my life, and so much nonsense as an intelligence cycle. We running around in circles? How do you... No idea. So I made this cycle where the client, the customer is in the middle. And the top source, the top circle, the propeller, is finding out what exactly does the customer want. The second one is the report cycle where we collect the information on the left-hand side, we create intelligence of that. Okay? Get the idea? With the client in the middle, because all these other intelligence cycles, I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but the word client doesn't come into it. What the heck is an intelligence cycle without the phrase client? That's what we work for, isn't it? Anyway, so there is much more on the internet, 3 minutes. Much more on the internet than just World Wide Web. And with this little drawing, I have tried to show to the audience and to my lovely participants and students how much more there is on the internet than just World Wide Web. The World Wide Web is on the bottom left-hand side. All the rest is not World Wide Web. Has anybody ever heard of Internet Relay Chat? How to get access there? How many do that? 90% doesn't do that. I see 2 hands here, that's it. How many of you used NNTP, used the discussion groups, where criminals can hang out and terrorists? How many of you actually have access to torrents, to social media? Ever realized that there is something like vContacte, or Odnoklassniki, or in Latvia they use Dragium, not Facebook? All the little things that you need to know. The deep web is much, much larger than the internet. There's not just one Tor. Tor is just one part of the deep web. There's so many more. Freenet, the Invisible Internet Project. And this is actually what I wanted to stress, that there is so much more out there than you think. And if you don't know this, you're going to miss a hell of a lot of information. I see the commercial information providers, I see the SMTP POP email, I see FTP, file transfer protocol to get access to university computers. Nobody has any idea that you're there, alright? Finally, validation of sources. I'm going to skip the rest, if you don't mind. Validation of sources. There is a lot of debate on the validation rules. What I'm stressing is that we should have a little doable, actionable checklists of vetting sources, of vetting authors, and not a thick book with a theory on how to validate and fact-check information, because nobody's going to use that in real life, in practice. What I really would like to have is a well thought of little sheet of paper, half A4, half a letter, that will give me, let's say, 4 or 5 rules that I can apply with email, with websites, with books, with everything. And for which I only need a couple of minutes to check information, to check authors, etc., etc. 1111, which is because they are all equally important. And not a signal that I had no idea how to do 1, 2, 3, 4. And then finally the technical validation rules, which is checking access data in pictures, reverse IP engineering, who is domain analysis, etc., etc., that you need to do if you are working with electronic data found on the internet. But so many have no idea how to do that, they don't have the tools, and they don't know how to analyze that. Okay? My entire point of my little presentation, my little contribution to this fantastic conference is 2 things. That is much, much more out there than you think. Ask your librarian. They know a hell of a lot more than you think. A librarian is not there to lend you books or journals. That's outdated, old-fashioned stuff. Get rid of the library, keep the librarian. Just do what they tell you to do. And ask them and tell them what your information problem is. Don't ask them to, do you have this in this book or do you have this in this journal? Just make sure they are a member of your research team so they know what you're working on and they can do the research themselves to find exactly what you're looking for. That's the real power of a librarian. And secondly, all these practical little checklists that you can use to enhance your work and enhance the consistency in the end products. Alright? Does this make sense? Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arne. Appreciate it.